Good morning. Has everyone had coffee? Some pastries?
More than coffee and pastries. Thank you so much. That was nice spread for us. Thank you this morning. This is a group that likes to say hello, we've noticed.
We saw a lot of hugs this morning, a lot of people reconnecting, so I think that's really nice. And we're having a good news week, right? I know Jeff's going to share with us the transitions happening at UCF. I know Seminole had a big announcement this week as well. Congratulations. Good news week.
So let's see, Central Florida here. Daytona. They're
Loud and
quiet.
proud.
They're here. We see them.
Lake Sumter State College.
Eastern Florida. Eastern Florida.
Let's see. There we go.
Seminole.
And Valencia.
And UCF. Welcome all. It's great to have you. How many, by a show of hands, this is your first summit? Wow, a lot of first-time attenders. Welcome. This is a great family reunion. We have a great time each spring when we gather. How many of you have seen Joyce at all of these summits? How many have been into, is it 11? Joyce Romano, where is she? She's here.
There you go. Good morning, Joyce. Should we introduce ourselves, Saul? That's important, right? We're just really darn excited to be here. Can you tell? We're not a comedy duo, I promise. We are actual higher ed professionals. My name is Claire Brady. I'm the Vice President for Enrollment and Student Affairs at Lake Sumter State College. Proud to be your co-chair this morning.
Yay. And I'm Saul Reyes, Vice President for Student Affairs at the College of Central Florida. Also glad to be here this morning. We have a jam-packed morning. You're going to hear hot off the presses some national and state numbers and institutional numbers that have an asterisk by them because they're so hot off the presses. And we're excited about the national perspective that you'll hear this morning, but you'll also hear some great stories from our own students and their experience with transfer to UCF. And that has always been a wonderful part of this experience too, is to hear from our students. So we're excited about this morning and what you'll get to hear and experience, and also maybe start some conversations that will then continue with your colleagues that you're here with today.
I think that each year we try to bring in a speaker who's going to be relevant to all of the partner institutions and is going to help us to advance our shared mission, who's going to advance us to increase our knowledge and our skills around transfer. And I think that's really apparent in the topic today, which is to really look at transfer from the entire pathway, not just simply as this big kind of nebulous thing, but looking at it from the actual experience itself, post, and then even reverse transfer. So we're very excited for our speaker this morning.
And also it's important to hear kind of the context that we're in, not just at UCF, but also for the partnership. And so we're going to introduce Dr. Jeff Jones now, our Vice Provost for UCF Connect, to give a welcome and also give us an update on what's going on and some of the exciting things here at this institution and in this region. Jeff?
We got a pretty big group here today, so I'm going to go to this. Well, thank you all very much. First of all, Saul and Claire, you're not a comedy act, but you got a nice smooth thing going here. That was pretty impressive, that back and forth, so I like that a lot. I do want to talk to you a little bit this morning, a couple topics. One, I was very pleased to see the number of you who held your hands up when we asked how many are attending your very first summit. I have been at UCF just under 5 years now, and so one of the things I would tell you is the power of the sustainability of this movement is one of the most impressive parts that I've seen. So just let me tell you that in November of 2005, the Central Florida Higher Education Consortium was formed. There were originally 4 state college partners and UCF that formed that consortium in November of 2005. In April of 2006, Direct Connect to UCF, as it's now known, was branded and rolled out to the public under that name. And of course, that name now resonates. For those of you who maybe haven't seen it yet, we took it upon ourselves at UCF this year to trademark that term. So you'll increasingly see now Direct Connect TM to UCF. The reason being, I'll just say kind of anonymous, I won't get really specific about this, but one of my colleagues was watching an announcement of a partnership up in north part of the state one day, and there was a kind of a computer-generated direct connect to something behind him. And I said, you know, we've got a lot of brand equity in this. We're always happy to share what we call the secret sauce, and we frequently do that. But we wanted to ensure that we have the rights to continue to use direct connect to UCF uninhibited. So a little brand equity, if you will. However, I can tell you from my perspective as someone who sometimes gets the opportunity to field the calls, we have a constant flow of people who are looking to ask us about how we do this so successfully. I've got another call scheduled next week with a school in Virginia, one of their vice presidents that just wants to talk about how they can enact this. And so let me tell you a couple of the reactions that I sometimes hear when I talk with these people. One of the first things they say is, well, you've got so many people working on this, and, you know, we can't do that. You know, their mind immediately goes to the budget implications of, I need 10 people here, 10 people there, 10 people here. You know, one of the first things I tell them is, it wasn't built that way. You know, it evolved over time, and more people were devoted, their time and efforts were devoted to the success of this program. But it's not like anyone flipped on a switch and hired 100 people to do this job, right? So that's the sustainability that's built in here. But then when they hear about what really happens and how we reach out and all of you reach out and have that daily impact in students' lives and their planning and the things that they're doing and the things that they're working on as individuals, that's when the power of this partnership really comes to play, I think. And that's when people realize that it's really about how you do things, probably rather than who's doing them and how much money you spend. So for all of that work that all of you do on a daily basis, first of all, I appreciate those efforts and applaud those efforts. So let me tell you a few things about what's going on from a University of Central Florida perspective. I've had the opportunity to speak to a number of groups in the last few weeks, and there does seem to be a lot of curiosity about what's emerging at UCF. So I want to give you a little bit of my spin on that. I was working until about 2 weeks ago directly for Dr. Dale Whitaker, our provost. He was selected to become the next president of the University of Central Florida. Dale has been here about, he'll be 4 years in August. Came from Purdue University, where he was a vice provost for undergraduate studies, and he came to UCF as our provost. One of the reasons he came here was because of his deep involvement with the University Innovation Alliance, which is where our current president, John Hitt, met Dale. And so this was sort of serendipitous. If you're familiar with the UIA, as we call it, that's 11 institutions across the United States, very large public institutions that are doing things in different ways than our colleagues do. We were talking a little bit about University of Texas and other places. University of Texas is one of those places. Georgia State University, Arizona State University, Oregon State University, Michigan State University, The Ohio State University, Purdue University, and I'm not going to continue, University of California, Riverside. If you look at the profile, Kansas, if you, I can probably, am I up to 11? I'm just wondering. If you look at these schools, they are dedicated to a couple different things, but one of the things that we're dedicated to as a group of 11 large universities is eliminating performance gaps based on demographic data. And the most successful of those universities are doing that pretty effectively right now. And we're learning from each other how to do that. And so I'll channel our current president, John Hitt, for a couple minutes, who says frequently, if you're from the top quintile of family income, you're 8 times more likely to get a bachelor's degree than if you're from the bottom quintile of family income. That's a dramatic statistic. And so at UCF, we take that access mission very seriously. And I can tell you the keystone of that access mission is in this room. Because that's how UCF, years ago, decided that we were going to continue to meet an access mission. Because as our academic credentials of our first-time in college students continue to go up, and I think we're now at a 1352 SAT, 4.05 GPA for our incoming class in the fall, that was not going to continue to meet the needs of the large majority of Central Florida high school graduates who were not going to continue to get into University of Central Florida. So from that the idea came the genesis of Direct Connect to UCF. 54% racial and ethnic minorities come through Direct Connect to UCF. Over a third first-generation college students come to UCF through Direct Connect. We collectively in this room, are the ones that are changing the overall demographics of the University of Central Florida student body. We are the ones driving the increase in minority enrollment there. The University of Central Florida now has over 46% minority enrollment. But if you understand what I just said, and that is we're contributing 54%, you know that we're lifting the boat. And that's the important work that we're all doing today, and I think it's going to be very dramatic going forward. And I can tell you our new president, Dale Whitaker, is totally dedicated to the Access mission, 100%. And having worked for Dale, we were overjoyed, those of us who work for him, that he was selected as our next president. He will be an effective leader. He's supportive of the things we do, and I think he will continue to be supportive of access and eliminating performance gaps based on demographic characteristics. So with that, I thank all of you for your participation today. I'm looking forward to this day. It's our 12th annual College Summit. That's sustainability. We're not going to do anything but build this to be a stronger, more impactful partnership going forward. And again, I thank all of you today and look forward to a great day.
I think it's always helpful to hear that background and to hear that information, especially with so many new folks in the room. So I'm excited this morning to be able to introduce our speaker, but first I want to do a few housekeeping things. So the first is the food is still here, and you are encouraged throughout the morning to get up and go grab a snack. Our restrooms are out in the lobby area, and we have already started a lost and found at my table with a UCF lanyard of keys. So UCF folks, check your purses. Oh, we found our winner here. Maybe I am a comedian after all. I didn't even know. All right, here we go. Congratulations. You get to go home today. But not till later. Not till later. Okay. All right. My staff is not surprised at all that I'm a little punchy on Friday. It's been a long week. Hasn't it been a long week, folks? Yeah. Okay. All right. Very excited this morning to introduce you to Michelle Blackwell. She, folks, is one of us. She is a professional who has worked in a variety of areas focused around student success, in particular transfer. She's a Tennessee volunteer. Anybody else in the room? Dr. Blackwell? Previously, she served as the Assistant Director of an Honors Program at the University of Tennessee, the Director of Transfer Student Services at Middle Tennessee State, the Director of Reverse Transfer for the University of North Carolina General Administration. Did I get that right? The system. And she really is focused on student success, advising, transfer. So we thought she would be an outstanding presenter for us this morning. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit more about her and her background. She is currently the National Manager of Reverse Transfer at the National Student Clearinghouse. So please give her a huge welcome.
Thank you. So you heard where I worked, and when I was at the University of Tennessee as Assistant Director of Honors Program, I will say more than 10 years ago, and we'll leave it at that, it was not a university that had a whole lot of transfer students. So I only got a few transfer students that I worked with. But when I moved to Middle Tennessee State University, the goal there was to make the process smoother. And any of you who've worked with transfers, you know how complicated it is. And I brought everybody together and asked them all the different issues across the campus of what would make it easier for students to go through the process. And I admit I was really dumbfounded at all the hoops, right? The hoops that they have to jump through. And I was absolutely amazed at it. And I worked for 6 years at MTSU with transfer students. And I just came really very passionate about transfer students, which is why now I'm at the Clearinghouse to try to get reverse transfer nationwide. Because it would break my heart to see students walk in the door with 90 and 100 credits and not have a degree yet. I mean, not have a degree yet. When I was at North Carolina, I did reverse transfer. We started watching the numbers there. We had students who had 140 credits, and I could not give them an associate's degree. Broke my heart. And I'll tell you the population, and you guys know them well, that really breaks my heart for how we have policies and procedures on transfers across this nation, and that's the military. 5 and 6 transcripts, hundreds of credits, and I can't give them a degree. I mean, I feel like all of us are working over the last 10 years to improve transfer, and I'm really excited about that. And you guys are going to be even more excited when you see my data at the state level, because you're going to feel really good when you walk out of this room today. So I want to get started with sort of how I see the picture of student mobility. When you think about students across this country, they are transferring among, between, across state lines. They're attending 2 and 3 universities and community colleges. I had one student in Middle Tennessee who literally was going to 3 community colleges at the same time in the summer because he was working full time and he could only get those classes at the times he needed it from 3 different campuses, driving all over Nashville to do that. So they really are very mobile across this country. And I made a few notes because I'm not a data geek. So I'm going to ask, who are my data geeks? Raise your hands. Come on. Oh, only 2? I know there's more. I know there's more. Some more data geeks in here? Who's my diehard data geek? Where are you? Who's the diehard data geek? Come on. Who's my IR folks? Ah! There's my diehard data for you folks. Okay, great. So while I love data and I love to use data, I'm not a diehard data person. So I'm caveating this presentation with, if you want to know the algorithms or the definitions of what's behind these numbers, you don't get to ask in details for that today. You have to go read the tracking transfer report from the National Student Research Center. Anybody read the report before? All right, a few. The first one came out 10 years ago. I think it was, 2010, 7 years ago. And it was in conjunction with the Community College Research Center. And as many of us who've read it, we've been begging for it again and again. And finally, the Research Center did it this year. And I'm happy to say it's going to be an annual report. So if you've not read the Tracking Transfer Report, it looks at national level data, but it also looks at state level data. And if you haven't heard about the Clearinghouse's new premium service, you're going to be able to, if you participate in the premium service, see the institutional level data, compare it to the state level, and compare it to the national level. And once you see this, you're going to want to do that. So when I was thinking about this, in the last 10 years that we've seen in the media, community colleges have become very, very important. They were already very important, but I think in the public view now, they realize how much you guys contribute. And they've become important for a lot of different reasons. Increasingly, we need better access points, and that's a great place for that. We know the demographics are shifting. We just heard that for UCF. And perceptions of the value. If you watch over the last 5 years, there have been lots of wonderful, awesome reports about the value of community colleges. The Clearinghouse actually has one report that's complete on all community colleges from all our reports, talking about the value of community colleges. So if you haven't looked at that one, I would recommend it. Challenges of affordability for the students, working full time. And then low enrollments. If you watch the numbers on enrollments, most of the institutions across the country, especially now that the recession's sort of better, I guess. Don't know exactly the way to say it, but now that the recession is better, we're seeing low enrollments across the country for most institutions. And then we all know that there are inadequate measurements for transfer students, especially at the federal government. I think it was this past year where they finally started looking at transfer students, but really when you look at their numbers, it doesn't tell the true picture. And the Clearinghouse can do that. We have great representation across the country of the picture of transfer students. So I need 2 Vanna Whites or Van Whites. I don't know how to say it. I need 2 volunteers. Come on. All right. Come on up. One more. Okay. So I have tchotchkes over here. But the cups are reserved for whoever gets the Florida numbers right. Okay? So we'll reserve the cups. So I'm going to ask I'm going to put a number up, and I'm going to ask a question, and then we're going to let the audience see if they can guess what the number means, and whoever gets the closest can get one of these, and you can choose what they get. Yep. So I'm going to put a number up on the screen, and I'm going to ask the audience to guess what the number means, and whoever gets the closest or gets it on the money gets one of these tchotchkes, except for the 2 coffee cups, because when I get to the Florida numbers, we're going to ask them to do that, and I'll do that then. Oh, so you're just handing out stuff. See all this cool stuff? So, charger for your car. Hold your cell phone in your car. A notepad, and some utensils for camping. So just pick one of these when somebody gets it right, except for the cups. These are for later. Okay? All right, are you guys ready? Uh-oh, I laid down the clicker. Need the clicker. 37%. What do we think? Graduation rates? Okay, anybody else? Wait, what? First generation? Okay. Attend community colleges. I'm sorry? Graduation rate? Okay. Non-traditional. Are you ready? Attended more. Who said that? Okay. So among all starting undergraduates in 2008, they attended 2 or more institutions before they got their bachelor's degrees. It's supposed to be before. And that's just within 6 years. Most of the time, it's closer to 7 and 8 years. 54%. Minority? Okay. What else? Anybody else? Come on. First generation? Okay. Anybody else? Female. Interesting. Yes. Graduate in 8 years? Okay. Anybody else? You're the closest. Enrollments at any given institution at this time in this country, the transfer in and out rate. Big number. 54% at any given institution on the average across this country are transferring in and out. He gets the tchotchke. Or gift, a present, I don't know. Next number. This one I might need to. Come on, some guesses. Need-based aid. Ooh, that's a good guess. Anybody else? Psychology. What else? Somebody said something over here. Graduation. Came from a community college. He got the closest. Transferred to more institutions. So remember that picture I put up, mobility. Even 20 years or younger, they're transferring 2 or more. It's amazing. When you think about the jobs in this country and how they're changing it, I think that getting the degrees for these students is going to be so much more important in the future. If you think about this, there's a book out called Industries of the Future. The person traveled with Hillary all across the world looking at how technology is changing the world. And if you think about the jobs in this country, a lot of them are being eliminated by technology. But there's new ones coming in, but what do they require? Higher skills. And so we're going to have to figure out ways to help these students who are transferring among, in between, and multiple institutions to have the degrees, or they're not going to get jobs. When you look at Lumina's data, 60% by 2025 will require some post-secondary education. 60%. Anybody want to guess this one? Male to female ratio, okay. Oh, 4 years, 6 years, okay. Let me give you a hint. Maybe this will help. I know they're hard. Makes you think about it. That way you're going to remember these numbers. Anybody? Yes? Transfer to a university. First generation, you're closer. It happens to some of them. All right. Dropouts? Is that what you said? Good girl. Give her a Chotsky. Right. So think about these numbers. They're transferring over 6 years to get a degree. And that's just one stop out. When you look at the stop outs, many institutions and the students have multiple stop outs. Why does that happen? Life. Yes, life does happen to all of us. It makes a big difference. Okay, you can sit down. Thank you. So when we look at the degree earners across the country from the Clearinghouse, and by the way, if you're thinking about your numbers for your institution or for the state, when I'm talking about this, remember we have national data. Okay, so your numbers are not going to match our data because I can look across when your students have gone to California or Texas or North Dakota, and it does happen. So when you look at the data, 2 in 5 associate's degree earners go on to earn a bachelor's degrees within 6 years or more. And that's from the 08-09 cohort. And the measure is first starting with associate's degrees, and as a first degree, 41% overall with the bachelor's degrees. And underneath, I don't know if you can see the ages. So as you can see, it's taking a while for these students to get the degrees. And this one's awarded by age at time of associate's degree. So 20 and under, 19%, 21 to 24, 34%. Over 24, 47%. Why do we think that is? This is 08-09. What happened in the recession? People come back to school to retool. We talked about that. Life happens in the stop outs. Our numbers at institutions are going down. The enrollment's going down across the country. There's a few that's not. There was a recent, I think it was Wyoming, who actually had a major increase. Why do they stop out? They're going back to work. But we have to think about the future and the jobs that are being lost and how we're going to help, especially that generation over 24, get these jobs. Saw a video on YouTube the other day. There was this in China, a mobile car repair car thing. And literally, it was a big truck, and they opened the back of the truck, and this machine came out, dropped down, went over, and went right underneath the car and lifted the car. And then he pulled out all the you know how you have the automatic things to put the tire on and off? Literally pulled the string out of the car and started working on the car. Didn't touch the thing that went out and went underneath the car. All he did was push a button, and then it raised the car. When I go to airports, and I travel a lot, 60% of the time, trying to get reverse transfer nationwide, many of the terminals now don't have waitresses and waiters at the restaurants. They have 2 people that manage it and 2 people that run the food out to you, and you're pushing a button to get your food. Think about all those waiters and waitresses who've lost those jobs. They're going to have to retool to get new jobs. I like this one, and actually, no, I don't think I do have a newer number, but we're making improvements. If you look at this trend over time, it's increasing. The share of bachelor's degrees earned by students with prior associate's degrees. Slowly, but it's increasing, and that's good. Give you a minute to look at the trend. From 16% to 18.9%. And if somebody wants to ask me later, I thought I laid my phone up here, but I have the latest numbers too. Yvette emailed them to me at 6:15 this morning. So when we're looking at data, I'm going to give you a little bit. Where's my data geeks over there? I'm going to give you a little bit of the background of what we look at. When we look at the student characteristics, we look at gender, enrollment intensity, okay, full-time, part-time, mixed, as we talked about income earlier for the students. We do look a lot of different categories. So when you look at the tracking transfer report, you will see how we measure transfer students on a lot of different ways. We look at transferring in and we look at transferring out because it makes a difference. We know transfers are complicated and how to measure them is not easy. And this measurement was in collaboration with the Community College Research Center and the Clearinghouse to develop these measurements to be able to have a consistency to track over time. So let's see. And at first time of degree, and this is the fall 2010 cohort, so the last 6 years, we looked at their 6 years. The breakdown for this group of the 2010 cohort was 53% female, which we've seen traditionally across the country. Usually the females are a little over 50%. Exclusively full-time, 21%. Exclusively part-time, 11%. But look at that mixed number. So think about the stop-outs I'm talking about, transferring, talking about. Really, these students are not sitting still by any means. They're moving amongst and between because of jobs and life and all those different things. Transfer out rates. Are you feeling good now? This is the national average for transfer out rates of first-time students seeking degrees who transfer to four-year institutions. So you guys are doing really good in Florida, 34% over the national average. Did you know that? Yes, no, maybe? All right, do I need to do some more questions and Chotskys? This is all of the states that are above the national average for transfer out rates. And that's transferring out of an institution into another. And it's sorted by transfer out rates. Pretty amazing. Award rates. Now you're feeling really good, aren't you? Transfer out students who earned either a certificate or associates before transferring to the 4-year. That's a pretty high number. When I looked at that, I was like, man, they are going to be so happy. You're doing a lot of great things in Florida. Can somebody tell me some reasons why you think the state level is so much better? I'm sorry? Common course numbering. Yes, ma'am. I think that's a big one. When I was working at MTSU, I watched 3 states. Can you catch? for transfer students. I watched Florida, I watched Texas, and I watched California and the innovation things they were doing. And now I'm happy to say that my home state of Tennessee is also being really innovative and making a lot of changes and helping those students. I don't know if you've seen what they're doing. They're performance funding fully. Indiana and Tennessee are the only fully performance states right now. I think there's 2 more in legislation, though. And they've worked really hard over the years to change how they're helping the students with the student success initiatives. I know that some of the Florida institutions here are among many of those student success initiatives. Who's Achieving the Dream? Anybody? One back there. Complete College America. Mm-hmm. Jobs for the Future, 15 to Finish. Student Success Centers. There's lots of initiatives by foundations across this country who are helping to make a difference. But I really am really excited that you guys have done such a good job. So this is transfer out bachelor's completion rates. Still, you're above the national average, 47%. 6 years. The number goes higher when you take it out to 8 years. This is the 2010 cohort completion rate of bachelor's. Still, you're above the national average. You guys are quiet. I like the wow on the last number. This is, again, above the national average, the states that are above the national average. And this is sorted by the transfer out bachelor's rate. It's interesting that it's really all over the country. And I expected to see Texas up there a little more, but I guess because they have so many institutions and so many transferring in and out, because they have a lot of military bases in Texas, like Florida does. Mm-hmm. So I really like this one because it tells the story, and let me get the gray numbers. So this is the transfer in bachelor's completion rate by 4-year institutions, and it's based on, the gray is the amount of transfer students at the public institutions. I thought I had those written down, but not. But you can see 41% public. I think we have the most success with the publics around here. There we go. So bachelor's completion rate 4-year select. Oh, that's select. Here we go. 73% completion by 4-year transfer and bachelor. The gray is the share of transfer out of everyone who transferred. So across the nation, everyone who transferred is the gray. So 41% of the publics have the transfer in bachelor's completion rate, and then 31%. And so 73% nationally is the public gray, 18% is the private nonprofit gray. Interesting the difference there. And then private for-profit is 8.4% for the gray. Now she said, I was literally, like I said, Yvette sent me one number this morning. So I'm excited about getting these up-to-date numbers for you guys. So transfer in bachelor's rate, Florida, 46.2%. I think that's really awesome. I think all the student success initiatives that you guys are doing are really making a difference. And I think over the next probably 5 years, we'll see those numbers even increase. Here's how you stack up to the rest of the country. And these are all above the national average still. I'm sorry? Uh-huh. Yeah. Not all of those states have common numbering systems at all. They are. I do know that they have 2 really strong systems that work with statewide stuff. They have a big committee that's been around probably 10 or 15 years working on statewide initiatives too. And I think some of these numbers, depending on when they started reverse transfer, are also changing. If you think about the credit when it's due state started 5 years ago? Wait, been at the Clearinghouse 2 years, UNC. So 5 years ago, the credit when it's due started. And so those numbers are reflected now in the Clearinghouse data. We don't have a way at the moment for institutions not participating in reverse transfer to tease out those data elements. But we know in some states, like North Carolina has topped over 2,000 reverse transfer degrees. Tennessee has topped over 2,000 reverse transfer degrees since they started. I have one state that I know, Oklahoma, is it Oklahoma State University? Yeah, Oklahoma State University, just with their one partner, their first year, they did 1,000 reverse transfer degrees. We know that El Paso has been doing it for 8 years. So I think some of that is a small effect, but not a large effect. Mm-hmm. And Washington's been doing reverse transfer for 3 or 4 years, I think. So transfer in bachelor's completion rate by selectivity. Selectivity, very selective. Your Harvards, Yales. Moderately selective. So the gray is transfer in bachelor completions, 33% of transfers overall. 44% for moderately selective overall, and 23% for very selective overall. This one I find really interesting, and Jeff pretty much backed it up earlier. Jeff, right? It was Jeff. So if you look at here, the percent of completion rates in the top quintile for socioeconomic status is much higher than the rest. When we break it down with community colleges, and I don't think I have that slide in here, we break it down by urban, suburban, etc. It still comes out that even when you're looking at the SES of the community college, the students in there, that the higher SES for a community college, the higher the graduation rate. The whole country. Red is Florida. You guys are feeling really good by now, aren't you? All that hard work has been paying off. The U.S. average is 13.3%, and this is the 2010 cohort. And we usually do cohorts so that we can look at the 6-year rates for institutions and states across the country. Nearly 1 in 5 transfers cross the state lines. 17% cross the state lines for the 2010 cohort in Florida. There's a lot of variation in transfers across states. When I look at and you'll see in a handout that I have for you, when you look at the students who are transferring across the states, you all literally have students who've transferred to every other state in the country, including Hawaii and Alaska. Yeah. So one of the things we do look at is when they transfer to multi-year institutions, and that's how we categorize them. So if an online like Phoenix and some of the others, we break that out, and I actually have that on one of the handouts on the potential completers for multi. But it is making a difference, and it's making it harder to track them. Because if you think about it, sometimes these, especially our military, they're literally going where they're locally at. They're online with another institution and sometimes online with 2 institutions trying to put those numbers together. So the way online education is changing, I think, is going to change these numbers drastically. We typically, by the way we classify, at least we use the state that they're located from is where we put them in there. But when we look at them and report the numbers, we say multi-year institutions. Mm-hmm. And that's one other thing I want to mention about your state. I was talking to the group earlier. In analyzing you, I had to ask the research center. They had your numbers originally for some of the institutional level stuff, but I had to ask them to redo it because now that, and I'm going to say 2 years or 4 years, you're all classified by the research center as a 4-year institution. So I was talking with them about this institutional level agreements in that you are going to want to know the numbers from our original views of a 2-year. And so they're looking at that because Florida's not the only state who has some that are both 2-year and 4-year, but you have them in the largest number. And so they're looking at that to figure out how to categorize your institutions so that you'll be able to see those numbers and we can look at those transfer numbers. So when I got your, and yes, I have your institutional level numbers sitting up here for the discussion. When I got your institutional numbers, they had to go rerun the data for me because they're like, Michelle, these are all 4-year institutions. And I was like, well, they have a lot of transfer students and they used to be 2-year institutions. So can you look at it from that perspective? And they were kind enough to do that. So I think the numbers will be really very helpful for you. But it's amazing how much these students are truly transferring across the country. So I want to synopsize some of the key results because I've thrown a lot of numbers at you. If you'll remember early, 13.3% of the 2010 cohort earned a bachelor's degree within 6 years. That goes up when we go to 8 years nationally. 31.5% transferred out in 6 years. 33% transferred out had earned a certificate or associate's. And then 42.2% transferred completed a bachelor's degree. 18% of all students who transferred in the 2010 cohort left the state. So that number's going up from the averages that we have. And I think you're right, Jeff. I think it's going to keep going up. SES, when we looked at the 2010 cohort and compared previous cohort in the tracking transfer, it was 15% versus 9.4% for low SES. Public 4 years, you're doing the best for transfer students. When you think about all the numbers I'm putting up here, the public 4 years, which we know predominantly serve the students who transfer from community colleges to your institutions. So you're doing the best across the country for them. So the original tracking transfer report came out in 2007, and then the recent one was 2010. So the cohort size was 18% larger. Recession. 18% increase in enrollment during the recession between the 27 and 2010. My expectation is when we run the next year's cohort and the next year's cohort, probably 2 or 3 years down the road, those numbers are going to go back down because we know that the enrollments are going down. But really the big picture that I want you to look at is those 2 middle bullets, the transfer out completion rate and the transfer in completion rate nationally. Really no change. Who's been to the National Institute for the Study of Transfer conference? Anybody? 1? Only 1? All right, 2, 3. All right, there's a few more. Okay, great. I've been going to that conference since it started, and I was there this year, and I was listening to all the different presentations, and I've been really, since I've been working transfer, proud of all of us across the country who are the champions and what a difference we're making, and we are making a difference. You can tell it. But I was sitting there, and it hit me that we still haven't moved that needle large enough in this nation. We have pockets. You saw the states that are above the national average, but that wasn't a whole lot of states, was it? Maybe 10 on each side. And I was hearing some of the same things in the presentations and challenges of those hoops for transfer students to get through a university and community college in a state that I heard 10 years ago. And so I just really want to thank all of you for your championship for the transfer students because it makes a huge difference in helping all those who are not above the national average to make a difference. So I hope that you'll consider looking at the Student Tracker Premium. I know that it's a charge and that's rare for the Clearinghouse. We usually do almost everything free. But if you're going to compare to the state and national level to have real accurate data, because we can cross all that data by the state lines, I think especially for the 2-year institutions, those institutional reports are going to really make a big difference in looking at where your students are going, how successful are they. You can look at the majors they're transferring into. Our student tracker, I had an institution, 2-year institution in Georgia, who actually used it to do 2+2 agreements. And what she did is she would run a student tracker report of her cohort of students at the community college who just graduated and see where all they went and what majors they went into. And she would target the highest number of students in a particular major to do 2+2 agreements. You know, a lot of times we're just assuming based on where they transferred what they're majoring in and making these agreements. But if you use a student tracker, you can make truly changes knowing that these students are going to this institution in business or this institution in engineering and make a difference in your success. So I hope you'll start taking a look at those reports. Let's see, who raised their hand earlier when I asked the tracking transfer report? 1, 2, anybody else? So it's been my experience when I'm presenting across the country that the people who read the National Student Clearinghouse reports are at the vice president level, the president level, legislatures, because we also present a lot at the Clearinghouse in front of legislators, both state and federal. So you know those mandates that come down from the legislators, those mandates that come down from your system office? Guess where that's coming from? They're reading the data. When I was at the UNC system office, I learned that real quick. Every one of the presidents, vice presidents, and provosts were quoting the National Student Clearinghouse data and looking at how their state's doing and wanting to know how they can do better. So if you're not reading those reports, I'm on a mission since I've been doing reverse transfer. This is my second mission, to get everyone at the mid-level reading the reports. When the first tracking transfer report came out, because I was truly learning and watching what transfers were doing, I took that report, went to my IR person, because premium didn't exist, had her run one that was similar to the national and the state level, and then I used it to get my provost to give me money to do student success initiatives. And so that really made a difference. And as we know, when we look around this country, how are you making decisions on your student success initiatives? How are you making them? What makes you decide to do a particular initiative on your campus? Come on, quiet group. I have a Chotsky. It's reactive. But what's the trend becoming? Proactive, looking at data, yes. Have a Chotsky. Everything we're doing is looking at data, making decisions on data. Any of you guys using predictive analytics yet? I got some yeses. You're making those decisions based on data. I like this one because it really gives you a good picture of the variation of degree earners with previous enrollment at two-year institutions. Let's see, California is 61%, Texas is 75%. I don't know I don't know my map as well. I used to remember doing that in high school and filling it out. 27% at the top of the country. North Dakota is 54%, but look at South Dakota, 25%. Really varies across the country. In case you didn't notice yours, why is the South so heavily what? I think there's a lot of different things for that. But yes, the population does, because think about warmer states, more people tend to live in warmer states. But yeah, I think it may be a population thing. As I said earlier, the back end numbers and how they look at it all, tracking transfer report, I'm on the mission to get you to read it. I think it could be a lot of other things too, especially if you remember what were the 3 states I said I watched? What's their numbers? Look at their numbers. They're high. I'm hoping, let's see, can I go back? I'm hoping in the next 5 years, based on Tennessee's initiatives, that Tennessee's going to move up through there. Because I know with their performance funding, they've done a lot of student success initiatives. They're all using predictive analytics. If you've looked at the data because of the free tuition at the two-year institutions from the lottery, they required to get the free tuition from the lottery that they had to fill out the FAFSA. And Tennessee now has the highest rate of filling out the FAFSA than any state in the country, and it's a large number. They really have successfully gotten the students to fill it out. And if you think about the free tuition, those students are getting the federal money first, and then they get the lottery numbers. So as we're looking at the trends moving into the community college, especially because of affordability, what did I say earlier? What population is really going to be helped by Tennessee's initiatives for the lottery scholarship for free tuition at the community colleges? Huh? Low economic status? Think about them. Free tuition pretty much is already there for them because of the federal government. And I heard somebody say it. You got it. Middle class. So as systems, as a nation, we really have lost some historic opportunity, I think, because of the lack of change. You remember that 2 bullets I said across the country with the recession. And I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. Reductions in state funding, we know that's been a consistent thing for the last 10 years for every state in the country. I think there were 2 states recently who actually did increase education funding, but I don't remember. I think it was Wyoming and some other state. But yeah, so if you think about when the session hit, it also hit all of the institutions in the state budgets and made it difficult. But we're going to have to do better if we're going to meet our 2025 goals. What's the Florida's 2025 goal? Anybody? 55? 55%? What populations are you going to need to get that 55%? Sorry? Come on. Ethnic minorities? Lower socioeconomic. You did get a prize. All right, there's a couple more, there's at least one more population that you're going to have to reach out to in order to meet your 2025, actually 2. One of them is the one we've been talking about all day, transfers. What's the other population you're going to have to reach out to in order to meet your 2025 goals? Non-traditional, but take it a step further, military. And what did I say happened to most students at least once? Stop out. You're not going to meet your 2025 goals if you're not reaching to all the different populations. Reverse transfer. So when I started at Middle Tennessee State University, I looked at the University of Texas, El Paso, and El Paso Community College. As you can tell, I did a lot of research on transfers when I first started. And I was noticing what they were doing with reverse transfer, saw them present at the National Institute for the Study of Transfer Students, and thought it was a really amazing idea. And so I started it at Middle Tennessee State University with 4 of my community colleges. And then I was happy to see that when I wrote the chancellor that they were going to do it statewide. And then from there I went to North Carolina to do it. And as I was doing it, and North Carolina was the only credit units due state who hired a full-time director. And I brought my 15 pilot community colleges together and my 8 pilot universities together. And we talked about all the trials and tribulations, as we know that we'll have to go through for reverse transfer, because there's a lot of hoops, policies, procedures, admissions, Ferpa, all of that. When we were developing the website for the FAQs, of course, I don't know, are there any registrars in the room? No registrars? There's one. So my registrars, of course, are the key people that you need for pretty much anything on a campus, and I never want the job. My registrars all raised their hands because we know how students are and said, who's going to answer all the questions of the students? Because we were developing an FAQ website, and there was silence in the room. And I said to them, I said, all right, I'll answer the questions of the students. 15,000 students got my email address. And I was freaking out at it first, but I was really glad in the end. Now, not all 15,000 emailed me, but I probably had about 1,000 who emailed me as we rolled out reverse transfer. And I'm really grateful for that. At first, I was freaked out, but I'm really grateful because what made me so passionate about reverse transfer is I got to talk to those students. I had a student in the pilot who literally called me every month asking when he was going to get his degree. Because, of course, our community colleges were going to evaluate after they got the data at the end of the semester and graduate them with their normal processes. Every month he called me. And about halfway through the semester, he started quoting me the policies of the community college and how he was going to get his degree. Quoting me the policies. He wanted it so bad. He had stopped out of high school, went back to the community college, got his GED, was going through the community college, had transferred to the university. He was on year 6 and still had at least a year and a half to get his bachelor's. And he was so excited about the opportunity to get the associate's degrees. And I got really lucky. My community college let me know that he did receive it, because it was going to break my heart if he didn't once they evaluated it. But he did receive it, and they let me call him and tell him that he had gotten the degree. So reverse transfer, to me, when we get it nationwide, is going to help us in a lot of different ways, with the military students especially. Until we get it nationwide, we're really not going to help those military students, because we know they go all over the country. But did you know it had the potential for a lot of different things? When you're thinking about these numbers that we're talking about here, it definitely can help increase your funding. Is there performance funding in Florida? Performance funding, for sure. When Tennessee went to fully performance funding, once they enacted reverse transfer, they had to go back and totally recalculate their performance funding for that reason. Completion rates, for sure. We've seen that in the data, both for the 2-year and the 4-year. Enrollment. If your institution is doing better, you've got good numbers, you're showing success, what do students and parents look for? Success. And decreased student loan default rates. You're like, really? How could it do that? Yes, I spend a lot of time thinking about this. When we look at the data nationwide for reverse transfer, from the credit when it's due states, of the students who transferred without an associate's degree but got it through reverse transfer, for the states, we saw anywhere of an increase from 5 to 18% in the bachelor's degrees for that population. So they transferred without a degree, they got the degree through reverse transfer, and for the whole state, an increase from 5 to 18%, up to 15% in the state for the associate's degrees. And we know with the credit when it's due states that not all of them started at the same time, even though the measurement for the research was the same time. For example, in North Carolina, I scaled up because there are 58 community colleges and 16 universities. So we started with 15 and 8, and then over a year we scaled up. So my numbers in this data would not have been the whole state yet. So think about this. When you think about the whole state, those aren't small numbers of people who are getting degrees. Let's look at it a little bit closer. When you look at 3 of the states who were really successful with reverse transfer, and part of the data is because they were able to have statewide longitudinal data to report to the researchers. So there's some states who did better, but they just didn't have enough data. And Hawaii has a really system that I'm envious of, because they literally have a seamless process for students to log in and look at everything they can transfer to in the whole state and how it'll cross over between the 2 years and 4 years. It's amazing. If you've not ever seen Hawaii's STAR system, you should look at it. But for the reverse transfer, if you see from the credit when it's due research, completed a bachelor's degree or were retained, 79%, 65%, 89%. Why do you think that is? Look at El Paso. You said UCF was substantially minority serving now, right? El Paso is 90% minority serving. They've been doing reverse transfer for 8 years now. 84% retained and completed the bachelor's degree of the students who transferred without an associate's degree. Think about all those numbers I said earlier of completion rates. All right, time for Chutsky. What does this mean? Huh? Tuition between community college 4-year. Good guess. Anybody else? Who said it? You look at the CAPSI report. It was a few years ago, I think. Oh, no, it was March 2017. The students who got an associate's degree, I forget who, the students who got an associate's degree increased their annual income anywhere from the $4,000 to $7,000. Now, I used to say that's a car payment, but I never calculated it, and I'm not a numbers person. So somebody told me that's a nice car payment. So now I say it's rent. I did calculate it after somebody told me that. For the 4,600, around $300 a month. For the 7, around 500. What are your students doing the majority of the time while they're in school? When I did reverse transfer in North Carolina and we hit 1,000 reverse transfer degrees, we did a press release across the whole state. Now, we were only doing currently enrolled students. Had a student call me up. Well, I call her student, but she really wasn't at the time. Who was working full-time, had stopped out, started at a community college, transferred to the university, stopped out. She had read the press release and said to me, I know I have all the right credits to get my degree. I want to do this. I'm not currently enrolled. How can I do this? So I walked her through the process of how to do it. And all I asked was one thing, to tell me if she got it and what it meant to her. So at the end of the semester, when she got her degree, and she got her degree, she was right, she called me up, and you know what she said? What'd she say? Got a raise. Who said it first? I don't know who said it first. I don't know who got it. Really can make a difference in people's lives. And even at the four-year institution, what are our students doing? They're working full-time and going to school. If they can make more money, what are they going to have more time for? The most important reason is they've earned the credential. And they deserve it. When you think about increasing those 4-year and 2-year degrees, and I asked earlier, why is it important to the student? What is it to the student? Why is it important to the student? Yep. It's a milestone. Yep. Okay, but you've answered a lot of them. Okay, you have to choose somebody to give one to then. Christy? Who's Christy? Catch. And I forgot, I thought I had on evidently the animation didn't work well on one of the slides, because for the Florida numbers, I was going to make you guess your Florida numbers. So how does the reverse transfer work at the Clearinghouse? I think this picture is pretty simple. And how am I doing on time? Am I doing okay on time? Okay. Reverse transfer at the Clearinghouse, the student, the 4-year gets the Ferpa release. It's a course grade data exchange. They pull one file of data for all students who are eligible for reverse transfer. They send it to the Clearinghouse. Then the Clearinghouse parses it out to all the institutions across the country. Now, I usually do the 4-year and 2-year on this slide this way, but I do have some Florida institutions who are participating, and they're on both sides. Because it's a course grade data exchange. It's not mutually exclusive. So Ferpa release, send it to the Clearinghouse. We parse it out to 2-year institutions all across the country. They evaluate and award the degree. So to give you some examples, University of Alabama came on recently, submitted their first file. They're doing it nationwide. I convinced them to do it nationwide. There were community colleges in Iowa who got students from the University of Alabama. There were community colleges in Texas who got students for reverse transfer from the University of Alabama. University of Texas Austin has been participating from the beginning with us. They were one of the ones who spearheaded the Clearinghouse to do reverse transfer. And they send all their students, because Texas is legislatively mandated for reverse transfer, and there's 19 states now that are legislatively mandated. And every time, because UT Austin is big, every time I have a new community college come on board with reverse transfer, they have students from the University of Texas Austin. And what's that population I said is we're going to make a huge difference for that right now we don't? Military. I'm on a mission to change their lives. So why a national solution? What can the Clearinghouse do? Data and, I'm sorry, I hear somebody. No? We cross the public, private, and the state lines. We're agnostic. We're Switzerland. When we did it in North Carolina, most of them who are doing it statewide are only doing with the publics. You're missing out on a lot of students with the privates and with even the for-profits for reverse transfer. Our goal with the reverse transfer is to alleviate the workload on the 2-year. We know the heaviest workload is on the 2-year. So we've worked closely to try to alleviate the workload for the 2-year institutions. So when you think about what I was talking about is crossing that public, private, and state lines, here's that synopsis of some of those numbers again. 54% of the enrollment transfer in and out. 1/4 of all those across state lines. Reverse transfer really can make a difference. You're doing it and making a difference. How do you become a part of our solution? It's real easy. You have to be participating degree verify and enrollment verify. And then we work with you to set up an account, work with you. We have an implementation guide that helps you walk through the processes in order to participate. Couple of key elements. You said 15 minutes a few minutes ago? 12 minutes. All right, I'll stop in 2 minutes. So a couple of key things we do for institutions for the 2-year in reverse transfer is we filter for associate's degrees. Because we know, what does a transfer student do when they're ready to leave the 2-year to go to the 4-year? With their transcript. I'll give you a hint. When do they request it? Not, well, sort of, not at the last minute, but so there are a lot of those. Anybody else want to guess? I'm sorry? Yes, ma'am. Since I missed out on the Florida numbers. So they request that transcript as soon as grades are posted, and they never go back and request it again. So those institutions who are doing reverse transfer with transcripts, the 2 years having to filter through tons of students that they shouldn't have to. And even if you do input the associate's degree in the system, you're not going to get them all. It's just not going to happen. And so we have 98% representation of that, and we can filter for associate's degrees. We can also filter for a threshold of total earned hours so that the community college gets it when they want it. They can choose anywhere from, I have one who has it set at 45, I have one who set it at 72. This is my contact information, and I need to ask at least one more question. So let's see. If you thought about 10 years of your stop outs in Florida, 10 years, what number do you think that would be? Stop outs, not completed a degree. 10 years. That's a little high. Okay. This is 10 years who transferred at least once and didn't complete with a degree. So yours is probably the whole population. Yeah. Anybody else want to guess? I'm sorry? 55.8? Are you talking percentages? I want numbers. Okay, we're getting closer. So started at a community college and transferred at least, the student transferred at least once, not necessarily started. Ooh, you guys are high. Go her direction. I heard 300. 200. Oh, you were not a Chotsky. All right, you get the coffee cup, but you have to share your Chotsky with someone else. So potential completers enrolled between August 14th, 2006 and August 12th, 2016, and you'll get to read the definition of this one. For Florida, your starting cohort was 174,481. So now we're going to have a discussion. And we have questions for you. So I have handouts. So how we're going to do the handouts, so you can get up and move for just a minute, is all of the original two-year institutions, I guess would that be the best way to say it, are on this side. And you need 2 sheets. Your institution is labeled by name. So be careful when you pick up the sheets and make sure you get your own institution, because officially our contract with you says I cannot share one institution's data with another institution. So read at the top, it'll tell you your institution. If you share, it's up to you. And then there's the potential completers report here that we're going to discuss. And then on this side is University of Central Florida and this potential completers form, and then your numbers. So if you want to take a representative from those colleges to come get them and hand them out, that would be great. So before we start reading these numbers, I have a question, one more question for you. And I think we have some mics over here. Do any of you have some insights or questions for me from what you've heard today? When you were thinking about these numbers, did you think about some things you can do to make a difference and how it can impact what you're doing? Anybody, any insights or questions about some of the data? No. I have 1, 2, 3 more Chotskys.
Thank you. So when you open it up to a national level for community colleges, do you see any negative repercussions emerge?
Open what up?
So the reverse transfer.
The reverse transfer.
Yes.
I think one of the things that it could be overwhelming when we open it up to a national level for the 2 years to process the students. But because it's not happening overnight, I think most of them should be able to develop their business processes well enough that it won't be overwhelming all at once, if that makes sense. And I think it will also bear out more of our policies and procedure issues across the country in helping transfer students. In North Carolina, we did the statewide articulation revamp the same time we did reverse transfer, and I got to sit on both those committees. And I noticed a lot as we were doing that, as we were doing reverse transfer and thinking about the policies and procedures, there were procedures and policies at the 2-year that was an impediment to the student to get reverse transfer. Now, some of those were legitimate for their population, but they had to really rethink what they were doing for their degrees. And one of the mantras, and those of you who are at Valencia, you know Kim Sepich, her and her colleague were the key who led it on the 2-year side for North Carolina. And their mantra was their transfer courses are developed and designed for a student to transfer. Why do you have a course in there that's not going to transfer? Okay? The faculty were hanging on to some of their courses for legitimate reasons for the students. The courses weren't going to go away. They were still going to be there for the students. But design the transfer degree to actually transfer. I mean, it was amazing. And so when we were doing reverse transfer, we noticed 2 courses that were an impediment to get the degree. And I've noticed that around the country. And I find it really interesting for one of those courses. What course could that be at the 2-year? Does anybody know? Well, math is the reason the whole country doesn't get degrees for a lot of reasons, but all right, strike that out of the video, please. But math, English? Nope. So think about your curriculum and how it's designed. It's not whether they're successful in the course. It's an actual course that a university would not have. Student success was one of them. I'm sorry? Phys Ed. Yes, ma'am, you get a prize. Oh, wow. While the universities do have physical education, it's not required, and it was required at the 2 years. Who said that? All right, any other questions that you have for me before we start the discussion? Here's a question. She doesn't want the mic, okay. All right, so we have another question. You're asking if it does. Yes, I think they do look at both of those, but the tracking transfer report will tell you that for sure. She got into the weeds of the pulling out of all the different numbers, and I just can't remember all that. The Research Center does so much of that with all the different numbers, because they look at population density, they look at SES, they look at rural, suburban. There's so many different ways that they slice the students, but like you said, because we're doing the institutional level reports, you'll be able to compare institution to state to nation. But remember, when you run your own reports, you're looking at your data. Your data doesn't have the data that went to to Texas, so our numbers at the Clearinghouse are never going to want 100% matchers. They should be close, but they're not ever going to want 100% match. And that's the reason I think the Student Tracker Premium, especially for the two-year institutions, is going to make a difference, because the highest cost for the premium for a year is $1,999. So if you think about, especially the two-year institutions, your IR staff, you have what, 1, 2 at the most? This can really help you with your data analysis and make a difference in looking long-term. Any other questions? Okay, so for your handouts, we're going to start with the potential completers report. And we have a few questions up here for you to discuss. And how long, Claire, do you want them to discuss it?
All 3 questions? Is that what you're asking? Mm-hmm. 10 minutes.
So 10 minutes to discuss the potential completers report, and then we'll stop for a minute and see if you have any other questions, and then we'll go to the second report, and we have some questions for you to discuss. So Claire is timing.
Absolutely.
10 minutes to discuss the potential completers report. So if you look at that second paragraph, it describes the potential completers and where the numbers come from. Discuss amongst yourselves. The one that has reverse transfer at the top is the potential completers report. Okay, we need some clarification on the potential completers report. So on the left-hand side, your cohort that stayed in Florida was the 140,000. Okay? Those students then transferred out that didn't stay, 17,000 to a multi-state institution. And what did I say a multi-state institution is? Phoenix, those type. And then you had 1,500 who transferred to New York. And then on the right side, these are the students who transferred into Florida. Okay? So the total that transferred into Florida that have the potential for reverse transfer is the 17,820. Does that help? Okay.
Okay. You've had a few minutes to dig into the data. Was there any cross-table data sharing? Don't tell Michelle if there was. No, never. We'd like to start the last part of this session with a chance to have a larger group discussion. So there are microphones around the room. And I actually want to start with question number 3 on your list here. Want to know a little bit about what specific practices can our institutions use to re-engage students who stopped out. And this could be something that you're currently doing or something that you think is something that we should all be thinking about. And I'm going to go to the back of the room to Ali.
We said accelerated programs, instructors who have experience with the population, so conscientious instructors, instructors who work in the field, and also night classes, more convenient classes, online classes.
So those would be the offerings that you would have in order to re-engage the students?
Yes, and financial incentives like scholarships and all that good stuff.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ollie. Other thoughts? How do we re-engage stop-outs? Dr. Armstrong. We're challenging our comfort zones today, people. There we go.
Oh my gosh. We talked a little bit about really on the front side of it with engaging the student or having a student be connected with somebody at the institution well before they've even decided to stop out. Because oftentimes if they formed a relationship with that advisor or success coach, they will even initiate that conversation ahead of time and say, next semester I'm not able to come back. Where the advisor or success coach can encourage that student, find out specific reasons why, and then also share with that student what options they have to return.
Sure.
And then the other piece or the practice that we talked about also was really identifying who are the students that are stopping out. Most institutions do not keep track of students. We gave a scenario where, next year somebody from this group could not be here. And many people won't know why that person's not here. Did they get another job? Did they move? Did they break their leg? Did they get a tire flat this morning? Anything could happen, but we don't know. So really keeping track and kind of engaging who the students are that are stopping out from day one, and then looking at what practices can be put in place to re-engage them.
So how many of you have a definition of what a stop out? A formal institutional definition? Could we start there? Joyce?
Actually, in campaigns that we've designed to reach out and all that, the first time we did it, which I think was about 6 years ago, we went back 5 years. And, it's a big number. And we did a campaign where we, I think we sent them a postcard, and then we, invited them to campus for workshops, and then we even incentivized it, I think, with some tuition discount or something if they came back within a certain time, and went through a lot of trouble with it. And it took what we discovered in looking at that. It was a positive experience, and it was really the students from the last 2 years who re-enrolled. Right. So then, since then, we do this routinely every spring. Where we identify that, but only looking 2 years back and not currently enrolled. And we decided the workshop really didn't, while it was like nice for those who were able to come, it wasn't really that important. It didn't seem to reach that many people. There was actually more staff. The staff that you need to serve people, because you have to have all your financial aid, all your advisors, all your admissions, everything, registrar, everything. So it was just very staff intensive. So we decided to just do the notification. We have a website where they can come in, and we do have specialized advisors, responding to the website, responding to the students who come in through the website. So that we really worked on the communication side of it, and we get about between 12 and 15% of whatever that subgroup is back. And I might mention that this year, actually, we're in a study with the University of Florida, are the researchers, and it's Jacksonville, Hillsborough, Broward, Valencia. I think there's one other. I can't remember the fifth college. And they are actually doing it in a control group where, they analyzed our students, and they have some students they're going to communicate with and others they're not going to communicate with. And so I think that's going to yield. It's Gates funded. Not Gates, I'm sorry. Helios Education Foundation funded. So I think we'll have some, and the idea is to then spread that like a demonstration project, and then spread that with everybody, what the findings were and what's worth doing and that kind of thing. And in that model, they're doing just actually through emails and text notifications to students. They're not doing the postcard mailing. And then again, we're setting up a website where the students can come, like a landing page, where the students can connect with advisors and work through our processes. And I think we did, we incentivized, we gave them a free class. We agreed to waive the tuition for a free class. So those are the ones who are getting like the treatment kind of thing.
That's great.
So there's a lot, you try a lot of different things, I think is what our table talked about. Like, what haven't we tried?
Yeah.
So.
Go ahead.
I wanted to make a comment, and it's I think every institution also needs to go back and think about what policies do we have in place that are actually turning into barriers and why the students are stopping out. You know, what are we doing? You know, we love policies. And oh yes, it's great. But we need to look at our practices, or any of those have turned into barriers.
And if you think about this group of students, they've all completed on this sheet, 2 years of full-time enrollment. If they were part-time, we took it out further. They have the potential right now for a degree, or the potential to be really close to a 2-year degree.
You know, Michelle asked us the question earlier, why do students stop out? And I was one of the crew that yelled, life, right? Well, we're part of that life too, right? Top 2 questions here. What are the benefits to expanding reverse transfer past your primary feeders, and what specific practices do you believe would help us to improve reverse transfer? Tell us a little bit about your discussions at your table. Ali?
I actually had a question about what the lady spoke about earlier. Like, how sustainable would it be to have those mentors, all those accommodations? You'd have to hire more people, right? Maybe you'd have an entire department dedicated just to that. Like, would it be in the budget? Would you be able to sustain all that help? You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Joyce, I think the question is about, Michelle wants to answer that question. I think the answer for her is yes.
I have a suggestion. So Tennessee, when they started the free community college, they had institutions reach out to their alumni and corporations, because what are corporations looking for now? They're struggling to hire people with high-end skills. And so for the mentors for the, I forget the title of the scholarship, they reached out to corporations and alumni and have them be the mentors so that they could learn about the fields they were in. So that might be a way to do that.
Well, I mean, I know I'm going to sound like a bad administrator here, but to me, it's not really new staff. It's focusing your existing staff. You know, so I mean, the kinds of help that these students need is no different than the in-depth advising, the enrollment processes. You know, we have capacity that do this. It's just a matter of how do you organize it. So we have a set of advisors who are, and when I say a set, I mean like 2 part-time. You know, I don't mean like a set of like 30 full-time people, but I think we have 2 or 3 part-time advisors who do online advising. They are our entry into, they focus on the online advising for all students, that inquiries that come in and stuff like that. So they were purposed to these campaigns that we do. And again, we're doing it once a year. We're doing it in the spring. And that was another insight. The first time we did it in the middle of the summer. Well, that was insane, because that's our busiest time with every other student, any new student we're trying to. So that's why we moved it to April, actually trying to incentivize for summer enrollment, but when we look at the results, we look at summer and fall. And we see that a few come back in summer, but most of them come back in fall. So, you know, and while I have the mic, I want to say one other thing. I'm sorry, and then I'll let other people talk. But when I say specific practices, because I'd really love to be an advocate for this, and I think we can all do this. This is a direct connect thing. We've got to solve the FERPA issue. Yeah. It's ridiculous what we put students through under the fear of FERPA. Do you know how many colleges have ever been sued by FERPA, on FERPA? You've been sued?
No, 0.
Zero.
The answer is 0.
Exactly.
0.
And how many times, and Mary, I'm right with you. You know, these policies, these barriers we hide behind, nobody's ever been sued on FERPA. Now, does that mean you throw it out the window? Absolutely not. Because it's about protecting student rights. And who cares about student rights more than we do, right? Like, of course we care about student rights. But what if in every one of our, from a community college perspective, what if in every one of our admissions processes, we said, if you are a Direct Connect student, we are going to share your educational information with the University of Central Florida as part of our transfer process. And what if the University of Central Florida said, if you are a Direct Connect student, we're going to share your educational information back with your transfer institution. I mean, how hard would that be? It's a sentence.
Yeah.
And we just got to do it.
Let's do it this afternoon, Joyce.
Let's do it this afternoon. All right, I'm with you, Claire. All right, good.
My nickname is Maverick for a reason. At Lake Sumter, we have nicknames for everything. So that group that Joyce described for us at Lake Sumter, we call them the Closers. They have T-shirts, or they should, right? And then we have another group that are called the Transformers. So I think we need to come up with a name for this group, right? Okay, this afternoon, Joyce, I'm not messing around. Okay. Other thoughts about reverse transfer, please? Oh. It's Michelle's favorite thing in the entire world. You have to give her one question about reverse transfer.
So I will talk to you a little bit about the Ferpa then. Oh, there's a question.
Oh, Aranea.
My question is, how does it work with when you talked about the national reverse transfer? So you put all these numbers into the national clearinghouse, and someone's like, hey, this person would be a great candidate for reverse transfer at our school, but they're millions of miles away. So what is that process like? Do they pay in-state tuition? Do they not? Do they have one course? Do they actually have to physically go there?
So for the students who do reverse transfer nationally, we don't set the policies at the 2-year for how they give the degree. It's up to the 2-year to do that. Now, do we have some best practices that we recommend from institutions all across the country? Sure. And we don't have everybody on board yet, but we're advocating for institutions who get data from another institution to participate. So I reach out and say, do you know you have students waiting in order to get the degree? And so as far as the policies and procedures, it's up to the 2-year. Do I do recommendations? Yeah. Have I done statewide trainings on all the policies and procedures and what all the institutions and states are doing across the country, and then to help them sort of drive that, because there's really no one central place that has that. We're working on that. But yeah, they establish their own policies, procedures. But for the FERPA, the most successful that we've seen to getting the most students to say yes is the admissions application. But remember, on your admissions application, if you have separate transfer applications, you're missing out on your dual credit. So you'll want to look at both your entering freshman application and your transfer application and see if they have transfer credit in order to get all those students. And I know that there's the Common App, and I actually have a meeting coming up soon to talk to the group with the Common App on the transfer one to see if we can get it on the transfer one. And as you may or may not know, there is a bill in the federal government called the Reverse Transfer Efficiency Act, and Florida has come out supporting it. That senator from Indiana submitted, and I think it was the Senate first, and now we're getting it into the House. The National ACRO is the one who's been supporting it, and so it's been attached to the Higher Education Act, and we're hopeful, but we have seen how the government's working right now, so we'll have to wait and see what happens with it.
Great. Okay, so we are going to, in a moment, thank Michelle, and then we're going to move into a short break. And then, sorry?
You want to go to the other handout right quick or not?
I don't think we have time. Okay. I think we're out of time. So, you have your individual handouts as well. These are the questions we were going to ask you had we had the time. So have a look at those. And we're going to go in a moment to a short break so that we can do the setup for the student panel, and then we'll move into the student panel at 1:15. But first, let's start by thanking our speaker for this morning. Many of you came over to ask individual questions or share your business card or seek to connect, so I hope that will continue beyond today. And we want to thank you for flying in. You had a webinar yesterday you had to do from your hotel. You have a webinar you're going to have to do this afternoon from somewhere in this building. So she's a sought-after person, and we really thank her for being here and coming all the way to Orlando to help us this morning at our Access Summit. So thank you, Michelle. We really appreciate it. Okay, we have a short break now, and we'll come back for our student panel. Thank you.
One of the joys about being in our role in helping plan this is our interaction with Jeff's staff. Jeff has an amazing team of folks, and they're always a pleasure to deal with. They're very responsive and attentive, and so that's a lot of the fun part of this. And one of those superstars, and you have many on your team, is Dr. Jenny Sumner. She has always done a great job with this event and always does a great job. We feel the best part of this event, no offense to our speaker, is to hear our student panel has always been a highlight at these gatherings. And I know that this morning will be no exception. I'd like to introduce Jenny Sumner with this part of the program.
Thank you, everybody. So I have to echo Saul. This is such a highlight of this particular event, and I'm thrilled to be the one to help organize this and to get these students together. In fact, this is going to be such a great group of students. They were gabbing in the hall, so I don't know once we start having them talk if we're going to be able to quiet them down. They're also, when they sat, like, Dr. Sumner, will you take our picture? Will you take our picture? I'm like, sure, not a problem. At some point, I will probably get a student panel reunion invitation because this group has melded, and it's the first time they've met. The way that we have set up the student panel for today is a little bit different than we've done in the past because we really wanted to talk about the entire student journey. So we've got two students here, Brett and Robert, who are still at their state colleges and are preparing to transfer. We've got who I'm going to call our recent transfers, Chandler, Tiffany, Sierra, and Milka, who have recently transferred into the university within the past 2 or 3 semesters. And then at the end, we've got what I would term our long-term transfers, Michaela, Ariel, and Demi, who have been at the university for a little while. And in fact, we've got Milka, who's going to be graduating, right? Oh, I'm sorry, Michaela, graduating, right? When? In summer. So she's almost a graduate of UCF. Proud night. So that's how we've set up this panel, so we can get a picture of the entire student journey, and we can hear from different students in terms of their different perspectives. So without further ado, I'm just going to launch into questions. Everybody ready to go? All right, here we go. My first question is for Brett and Robert. What steps are you currently taking while you're at your state institutions to ready yourself for transfer?
I have gone and met with the advisors for UCF that are located on the Daytona State campus a few times, go over degree options and what I need to make sure I have submitted to the UCF office to make sure that everything goes smoothly. I have started the process of speaking to a financial advisor to make sure that I've done all the avenues to get financial aid and or loans to be able to pay for school.
Robert, what about you?
Once a week, I've been meeting with the success coach that's in the UCF Direct Connect at Seminole State, and we've just been going over the different paperwork that I need to get completed or transcripts that I need to have sent in, and it's been nice to have that person that can go over step by step the different things that I need to get turned in, because it's a lot of different paperwork, and I forget stuff.
So sticking with Robert and Brett for just a second, and it's my fault I didn't introduce you in terms of your institutions, where you're from. Brett is from Daytona State and Robert is from Seminole State. Are you finding it to be a challenge in terms of preparing for transfer? And if so, what are some of the barriers or challenges that you would face? Robert, you mentioned it's a lot of paperwork. How do you keep all of that organized, or are there any other challenges?
I have a folder that I'm trying to put everything in because since I meet with her on a weekly basis, then I can turn in this bit of paperwork that I got in from, like, I'm waiting on medical records. I'm trying to get a hold of that for shot records. I went to Florida State College at Jacksonville before I moved to Orlando. So I'm waiting on my official transcripts from them to be sent down. So one thing that I've been doing is, like I said, because I'm meeting with her weekly, that I just, in between our meetings, I just keep it in a little folder. That way I can turn it in, because it is a lot of paperwork, and I guess, I'm very, very busy. I work full-time, I go to school full-time, and I have, one kid, and I have a daughter due in May. So, thanks. So just everything being so busy, I forget a little bit here or there. So I guess just keeping it all in a folder, and like I said, that weekly meeting has been the biggest thing.
I have not had the same struggle that Robert has had with paperwork. I will be going to UCF online, so I did not have to scrounge for medical records, thankfully. I'm very much appreciative of that. I actually am from Oklahoma originally. I did have to request my transcripts from 2 different state colleges there, but I was really lucky. I just filled out the forms and they got mailed to me, and I just walked them into my local, the campus UCF office. So I personally have not had a hard time with the paperwork. I did my admissions online, and everything's been emailed to me, which has been really helpful because I can understand the paperwork shuffle. So God bless email.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to flip gears just a little bit and go to Chandler, Tiffany, and Sierra. Because you're our most recent transfers, looking back on the transfer experience, what did you do to prepare in order to get ready to transfer into UCF? Were there some specific things that you did, specific, again, paperwork or check boxes that you had to mark off? What were some things that you did specifically to prepare for transfer?
Hi, everyone. So I talked to Miss Kimberly Popper. She was my Direct Connect coordinator at Eastern Florida State College. So I just weighed out all my options. I was like, tell me everything that I basically need to know so that I can be aware of everything. Because there's a lot of things as a transfer student that we don't know. So I just made sure I was like, okay, UCF has this what to offer. Okay, Eastern Florida has this what to offer. And all my tasks that I could do at Eastern Florida, I made sure I did it. And then once I got to UCF, I talked to their coordinators and advisors because there's some things that maybe got lost in files that I did not know. So I was just prepared that way, just weighing out all my options.
Tiffany, what about you?
I agree. I met with my advisor almost on a weekly basis. I was with Tanya Fritz. I'm a first-gen student over at Seminole State. So I just made sure to meet with her weekly almost to get everything that needed to be done. Also, I formed connections with our on-campus Direct Connect. So Louisa over there and Georgia over there. I made sure to make those relationships known so that they would know me and know my needs and everything. One thing I love about the psychology catalog, when I was looking over it, it's all boxed out. So depending on what you want to do, you just go down your check marks and say, okay, I need this class, and this class. I love it. I love that the catalog has been redesigned, I guess. It made the course selection, or not course, but the major selection so much easier. Going forward, knowing what I wanted to do, it laid it all out for me, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do with psychology.
So real quick, let me stop you there. In terms of the catalog, you had mentioned it's easy to flow and you just check off the boxes. Is that Seminole State catalog or UCF's catalog?
Yeah, so whenever I was talking with the Seminole State, with Tanya, going over where I wanted to go to UCF, what degree, what major, we were looking at a few different ones, but we pulled up the catalog for the UCF psychology degree, and everything is just so laid out. It just makes it so easy, and I really felt confident that I would know what I was doing when I got there, and that's why I chose psychology.
Chandler?
All right, so for me, at Lake Sumter, they had Christine Klein. She knows me very well. I was in and out of her office quite often because I couldn't pick a major I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do graduate-wise. So she helped me out with that very well. They kind of gave me a hint to turn in all my forms to them instead of giving it to UCF because it kind of just gets backlogged just because of all the transfer students that came in. So that was kind of nice. Oh, was I not supposed to? But it worked. It helped. It didn't make me forget the paperwork because that was kind of one thing I was really worried about. But another thing I wish I kind of would have checked up more on was the transfer credits because, like, for instance, this semester when I was signing up for neurobio, my anatomy and physiology didn't transfer because it wasn't the same credit, so I had to get an override. It would kind of just been nice to keep an eye out for that in the future.
So sticking with that particular theme, what were some unexpected, if you had any, unexpected barriers or challenges that you faced when you were transferring to UCF? Was it a seamless process, or were there some hiccups that you were like, I didn't expect that?
For me personally, it was my transcripts. Just getting my transcripts. So I'd ordered them a couple of times, and finally, whenever I got them, I hand-delivered them because I still didn't have my AA recorded on the UCF. So I wasn't able to declare a minor until all of my general education courses were completed. So I was able to hand-deliver over to our Direct Connect to them on campus, but that was the only thing that I had an issue with, just getting them from Seminole State to UCF. It seemed they always got lost in translation, but I eventually was able to just hand-deliver them, and it took care of it.
Sierra, any hiccups?
I had like the same issue with transcripts. I wouldn't say that I declared that I had my associate in arts degree. And I was like, well, I can't sign up for certain classes, or it was a certain class. They were like, you can't, it doesn't have the same equivalent, wasn't equivalent. So I had to talk to a lot of the advisors and be like, okay, math department, can you let me know if this is a certain class I need to take or that if it's equivalent? Because I didn't want to get to UCF and have to retake a course and then it prolonged my graduation time. So it was just transcript and AA and making sure my classes were equivalent.
Chandler?
I think kind of the same thing with the transcripts. It just took a little bit longer, I guess, because, well, I finished up in the spring, and it just took a little time to get there, and I kind of did orientation a little bit quickly, so the transfer credits didn't quite come in, so that kind of slowed me down a little bit, but not too much.
All right, we're going to toss it down to our veteran transfers at the end of the row here. So in terms of your transfer experience, similar question. What challenges or hiccups did you face when you were transferring into the university? We'll start with Milka.
Hello. Well, for me, the process was easy in terms of having the Direct Connect office there, but going for social work is a limited access program, so I had to do a separate application for the program. So coming from Seminole State, that you have that more one-on-one with the advisors and going into the main campus, it was a little bit difficult in terms of if I had questions with the application in terms of the social work program and like the medical paperwork, because I came from Puerto Rico, transferred to Seminole State, and then to UCF. So having some of that paperwork and knowing like where to send it. So sometimes calling the main office at UCF, it was a little bit difficult to get a hold of somebody because it's such a big institution. But pretty much at least the starting process, it was pretty easy. It was more than like having the final paperwork there. And being a non-traditional student, for me, was a little bit difficult because I was not usually during the day on campus. So with my assigned advisor at Seminole State, I was able to work online, email, over the phone, so that was very easy. It was a little bit harder with UCF trying to do that.
Kayla?
And when I went to the offices on the regional campus, I had to actually, they just basically told me that I needed to talk to main campus. And if you're on the phone with them, you'll be on the phone with them for 3 hours. So eventually I just had to drive all the way to main campus and wait in line and go through that. And I had to do that a few times throughout my program. For different issues, I had to drive to main campus to get whatever I needed done. So I think maybe just the regional campuses could use a bit more resources. I go to the College of Nursing on Daytona.
Opposite of Michaela, my regional campus is Cocoa, and they're awesome. And I see one of my staff members here, Miss Jessica. Yeah, everything. So my transition was definitely a smooth one. The only time I had to go to the main campus was only to turn in my transcripts, my official transcripts, and that was just a few months ago. But everything else, communication, everything else, my entire process was just so easy. I had no hiccups, no preventions. My transcripts, me going from leaving Eastern Florida State, going to University of Central Florida in the elementary program was smooth. I didn't have any struggles. I think I was kind of spoiled by the office. So, yes.
Well, I'm a little bit different as well. I was a dual enrollment student from College of Central Florida. I was lucky enough to have not only my high school advisors, but my dual enrollment advisors, as well as the College of Central Florida advisors. So I had a lot of advisors, but again, with the transcript situation, I had a really rough time getting my transcripts in. And classes transferring over, whether they were the equivalent or not. My math placement test is still on my UCF portal, and I've been here for almost 2 years. But other than that, I didn't have too many hiccups. I think the toughest thing for me was also communication. There are so many phone numbers at UCF. Getting a hold of somebody, the specific person you need to get a hold of, was really tough. And I had to also drive out to main campus a few times to make sure that I had all the necessary paperwork and documents. Other than that, with all of my advising, it went really well. the first thing I was mailed with my acceptance letter was a checklist, and it had like your FAFSA and when it was due, and your transcripts and your immunization records, and everything that I really need to have completed, and that was a huge tool for me. So.
All right, so rapid fire question. Looking back, what do you wish you would have known prior to transfer that possibly could have made it easier?
Okay, sorry. Prior to transfer, sorry. Okay, so prior to transfer, something that would have made it easier for me would have probably have been to have like a specific access point to certain departments maybe. When you look something up online, probably like 15 different phone numbers come up, and then you're on hold for a really long time. So that's really, it's just kind of disappointing, especially when you're looking forward to talking to somebody on the phone about something that you need to have done, or a deadline, or something that you're excited for that you want more information about. I also I go to the Rosen campus at UCF. I probably should have known this, but I had no idea there was such a barrier between main campus and Rosen. Seeing as they're so far away, I don't really feel that university feel every day, which is kind of unfortunate. But again, I am very lucky to be in my major and in the heart of hospitality. So.
Okay, with me, if there was one thing that I wish I knew before transferring would be how the process operated with financial aid with my classes. With the, I don't know how it goes exactly, but I know it's basically you have a certain amount of years you have until you have your degree to use financial aid. And I wish I had a more in-depth explanation about how financial aid operates with the courses we take. And how it operates if we fail a class or have to repeat a class, how it affects financial aid in our time as students.
The only thing that I can think of at the moment is I also was in a restricted course, nursing. I had to apply to the college and to apply to the College of Nursing. And there were definitely a few things during the application process that I needed to push through with the general college because they were holds that I couldn't do things to apply to the College of Nursing until I got them done. So I was trying to get everything done in such a short amount of time. So those holds on the general college side of it were keeping me from getting things done for the College of Nursing at the time.
For me, I think it was more knowing what to expect as a transfer student. Because like I said, coming from Seminole State, and having my assigned advisor and then going into UCF, sometimes you can feel a little bit lost, and maybe more like early communication from UCF, something like, I know that they do like the Canvas modules, but maybe something specifically towards transfer students, but like what to expect, because that first semester when I got there, it was a huge campus. Coming from Puerto Rico, I came from a tiny college. Then I went to Seminole State, and for me, that was huge. And then going into UCF, I was like, I have no idea where am I going. And I didn't know what to expect in terms of the amount of reading, the amount of homeworks, and like what I needed to do. So I thought that I was doing wrong. But I saw that after my first semester, I've been able to get good grades. So it was more like all that transition, like getting ready for it, like know what to expect as a transfer student. And it's okay if you're scared, and it's okay that you might not do very good on your first semester. You still gonna make it.
What I wish I would have known, took it off. What I wish I would have known is the College of Business at UCF is so big. In one class, I have 1,500 students in one course. And it's a lot of overwhelming, and professors, they all can't dedicate time to you as if you were at the state college. So transitioning from that, I wish I would have known that there were 1,500 people in my class, and the resources of me being able to adapt to that and to talk to my professors, because they are limited of time. And the College of Business is constantly changing. We have lecture capture courses, and that's basically live classes. You don't actually have to go to class, but you can, and it's an option, and that's beautiful because you can rewatch that lecture.
but also there's kind of required courses that you didn't even know that you had to take. So that prolonged your graduation. If you planned on graduating one semester, you have to push it back because of the catalog year and the constant changing. So if there was something where it's like, this is our future plan for the College of Business, so we can adapt to that, because sometimes that pushes us back, and then that affects our financial aid, and like life hits us, and it's just like, how do we adapt to that? I wish I would have known, but just more communication from the College of Business would be.
One thing definitely for me, I would say, similar to her experience, with the UCF catalog, they did detail everything that we needed. However, they didn't, I guess, really specifically tell me that I would need more than what was detailed on that list. So with Seminole State, I was given an educational plan, and I took these classes, and I made my schedule with my advisor, and I graduated with my 60 credits, done deal. But when I transferred over to UCF, I was on that same path. I thought I had, okay, my checklist, here we go, we're ready to go. But then once I emailed an advisor in the psychology department, and she emailed me back that I would probably need to pick up a minor because I wouldn't be meeting all of my credit hours that I would need to get my bachelor's. So that was really, I was almost taken back by it, because you have a timeline, and then these unexpected things come up, because coming from a state college, here's your classes, you're good to go do your thing. But now 120 credits have to be met, and you're only, you're falling short of 15. So that was the biggest surprise for me.
To be honest, I can't really think of anything that I would have done differently. I just felt like I used the resources very well, and they were very attentive and very helpful. That just made the transition pretty smooth for me.
Honestly, the biggest thing I'm most excited for is, like I said, I have a really busy life, is I feel like now that I'm finishing up at Seminole State and I'm taking that next step forward to UCF, is that I'm excited to be just one step closer to being done. It just keeps me really busy, and I'm excited to just go to UCF and I guess almost feel like making a bigger step up in the world is what it feels like to me, is making that next big step in my life, and that's what I'm most excited about with UCF.
I kind of have a similar answer. I've been working toward my associate's degree since the fall of 2004. I took a lot of life breaks. I earned a cosmetology license during that time. I, had 2 kids. So I'm just excited to finally be done with my associate's degree and to start my bachelor's. I finally figured out what I wanted to be when I grow up. And it took me a long time to kind of admit it. And just because I don't have a lot of confidence when it comes to academics. So I'm just really excited to take that journey. And the UCF advisor, I remember the first time I went into her office when I had decided to change my major, and she was like, well, what do you want to do? And I had a really hard time saying it out loud because I didn't think that I could achieve it. And she just told me, to kind of paraphrase, like, I'm the one that's standing in my way. And so they've been very encouraging, and I have a very encouraging family as well, and that helps. But I'm just, like Robert said, looking forward to taking that step up and getting closer to that goal. My major at UCF is legal studies, and I really hope to be able to go to law school, and I would like to specialize in immigration law.
When I first started at UCF, I had a really challenging time getting engaged with the university, seeing as how Rosen is so far away from main campus. I was a dual enrollment student, so I never really had that college experience. And I think that I was imagining it a lot different than it actually was. And then I met Dr. Sumner, who helped me get engaged. I started joining clubs. I'm a board member of Futures and Vacation Ownership at Rosen. And I'm also a member of Eta Sigma Delta, an honor society at Rosen. And I've also decided to pick up a marketing minor at main campus, and I'm hoping that'll give me a better experience at main campus, I guess. I've only been to main campus a few times. I've been really excited. I'm looking forward to that. And I've also decided dual major in event management so I can prolong my time here. You don't really hear that very often, but I'm really excited to stay. I've always loved education, and I think that's probably one of my most confident decisions I've made since I've been here. So I'm very excited for that.
Well, I haven't been much involved with the university in any clubs or any memberships. Not that I don't have the desire to do so, but so much is my time as of right now. So I spend most of my time working, and I'm very involved in in the home church I attend in my city. So most of my time is spent doing my school studies, working, engaging with my children in the community, and doing my duties or activities, part of our church. I do have plans to get more involved in the school, but I haven't. I have gone to a couple of seminars. I went to one this year. It was a seminar here in Orlando for national security, and I went to that one. So I go to seminars when I have the time, or a meet and greet then, but to be a part of a club or a board, I haven't engaged in the activities or the programs at UCF to that level just yet, but it is a desire of mine. Because most of the engagements and the invites are in the Orlando area, but I live in Cocoa. So if they had some more activities or engagements, meet and greets in my city or in Brevard County, that would be more convenient for me if it was just local.
I definitely feel that disconnect between being on a regional campus and main campus. I don't necessarily feel like a UCF student all the way out in Daytona. But on my campus, our student involvement office would do a bonfire when we would income as a nursing class in the spring. So we would kind of get to meet everybody. Some of the faculty might be there, and some of the students from the previous years might be there. So that's one thing. And then as far as student clubs, I'm on the board of my Student Nurses Association chapter in Daytona. And we actually just got back from National Convention. So I'm involved in that way. And we sometimes will have things that we meet with Orlando's chapter. And then also the Sigma Theta Tau Honor Society.
Okay, so I'm currently a full-time employee. I work at Seminole State. I started as a work study there, and now I'm an employee. So sometimes I don't get to participate like during the day at some of the events that they do at the main campus. Usually I get there around 6 or 6:30 p.m. for my classes, and sometimes I get to see like some of the events happening, and I get to go like really quick and I get a slice of pizza and walk to the classroom. But something that I will say that I love about having direct connect in the regional campus is that at least at Seminole State, I have seen that they do a lot of events. So even though I go to the main campus, but even though I don't get to be there during the day for some of the events, I get to participate in some of the events that they do at the regional campus. I would say maybe doing more for those students that work during the day, like maybe having some events later at night, or more events at the regional campuses, because I feel like she said, like you don't get that like college feeling, but also by working at Seminole State, I get to encourage other students. Like, yeah, they're doing an event, go. I don't know if they used to do it when I graduated. I graduated back in 2015 from Seminole State, but I know that they currently do like a field trip, and they take the students from Seminole State to UCF to give them a feeling of it. And I think that's awesome, and I would have loved to have had the opportunity before when I was a student. So maybe even doing that like at different hours for students that work during the day.
So I was a dual enrolled student. There we go again. So I was a dual enrolled student, and so I had 1 year left after I graduated from high school. So once I finished that year, I was like, okay, now I get the university feel, but I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. So I researched, and I found transition transfer student services that was on campus, and I met with them, and they just laid everything out for me. They were like, okay, Sierra, this is the club that you should get into. These are all the clubs. And they also had a group me chat, and all of the people in the group me were from so diverse, so many clubs and organizations, because we have over 600 clubs at UCF. And so as I was transitioning, I was like, okay, Sierra, you have 2 years. You have to get all the fun in between the 4 years because your friends are at a university for 4 years. So I was like, okay, what should I do? So I ended up joining a co-ed business fraternity, Delta Sigma Pi. And so that was my goal. I was like, okay, this is what I want to do this semester. I didn't want to take on too much, because if you take on too much, you get stressed and overwhelmed. And I was a transfer student, so automatically you're stressed and overwhelmed. And so naturally, each semester I made it my goal to join an organization and dedicate myself to that organization, because I want to get the best experience out of everything, to put on my resume and to just enjoy life, because as a transfer student, you're so limited. 2 years, basically 4 years into 2 years. So I just took that opportunity. I fell in love with that services, and I'm still in contact with them, and I'm loving it. I'm really glad I got in contact with them.
I have actually a similar story to Melka. I was also a work study at Seminole State, and I actually did get to participate in the field trip. It was the college tours to UCF. At that time, I was still a student, so seeing it on the other end before I was able to transfer, I did love it. I did almost get my jaw on the floor when I arrived, because I did not realize how huge the university was. But it was a beautiful campus, and it just got me even more excited to transfer. Being a non-traditional student, I do most of my classes online, so there is a bit of a disconnect. I will say, though, the regional campus at Seminole State is really good with their involvement on campus. They do service a lot of their students there. They hold events. They're not really too out there to be noticed, but when you're going through the Direct Connect office, you'll definitely see the involvement there. So I do appreciate that. I do love the idea of online, though. Like I said, I'm non-traditional, so I do take everything almost primarily online, and that would be a great experience to just be able to connect online as well.
So Lake Sumter, it's kind of, to me, it's a very homey feel. The South Lake campus that I was on only really had 2 buildings when I was there, so we really knew everybody, all the professors, all the students. And so going to UCF, where you have 40,000 students that go to campus and the 600 clubs, I'm kind of like, I don't know how to involve myself. And so I kind of just not necessarily sat back the fall semester when I came in, but I took this research methods class, and one of my professors noticed me and offered me a position with his research group, worked with men's health, testicular cancer, and prostate cancer as well. And then on top of that, he gave me a high impact coach, which is kind of a tutoring over at UCF, and so that's how I became really involved. Instead of looking at like the whole picture of UCF, I kind of just wanted to focus on health science, because that's really what I'd only want to do. And so with that, I kind of made it feel a little bit more homier, and I'm loving it.
Since I've been down here, I only moved to Orlando last July, late July, early August, and I transferred to Seminole State. So I actually I only had just the 2 quick semesters there, so I haven't been too terribly involved in different clubs or anything. But occasionally, and this is something I liked about Seminole State, because it was so, honestly, I guess the campus was really big compared to what I was used to up in Jacksonville. At least a few times a month, they would have something going on, and it was loud and it was noisy, but it was fun. And so I'd always go check out whatever was going on, and sometimes it was some sort of protest for something that was going on halfway across the world that I hadn't even heard of. Then I learned something new that day. And other times it was just, a get together. Let's go play video games in the little student center. So I mean, I haven't been overly involved in clubs, but just when I have an hour of free time here or there, it's just been nice that there's something going on a lot of times that was fun to just kind of walk around, meet some new people, talk to people.
I'm not sure how to answer this, so I'm going to do the best that I can. My involvement at my state college is kind of selfish in the fact that like I had to use all of the resources that were available when I was going through the math classes because I'm terrible at math. And Daytona State has a great academic support center. And so I would literally spend hours in that building. And we also have a great library that is a partnership with UCF and a writing center that is a partnership with UCF. So as an online student, I do think the online suggestion of like meet and greets is a great idea. But I also like the fact that I can still have access to the writing center on our regional campus and the library on our regional campus. I'm not in any clubs. I'm not a club person. So that would not benefit me per se, but I do think it would probably benefit a good amount of online students. And if there were a club that did interest me that was available online, I would certainly join it. And if it was something where maybe once a month or a few times a semester, a regional location, whether it be main campus or Seminole or Daytona State, was used as like a meeting point, I think that would be great. And that would help online students, get to know their peers in a face-to-face way.
I don't really have a question, just Demi, proud that you graduated from the College of Central Florida. When you were graduating, we didn't have the privilege for Direct Connect to UCF. And so for the challenges that you had made mention of, that's why we're so thrilled to now have Crystal Flynn over as our face-to-face person where we send all of our students that may have an interest in Direct Connect. So just another comment of why the value of such an arrangement, and we're thrilled to be a part of it.
So a lot of you mentioned better communication. Can you explain to us what that means to you? Because we have an idea of how to communicate with you, but I think it would be helpful if we got a student's perspective on that.
So I believe that you guys have great communication. Sometimes it's just us students that we're just not willing to communicate back. And sometimes, and that's the truth and reality of it. Sometimes we're just like, well, they ain't reaching out directly to me. They're not pinpointing, oh, Sierra, like, do this and that. And we're kind of like used to that going through high school, going through state college. So you guys have great communication. It's just willing for us to actually reach out back to you. Now, some cases we do communicate to you guys, but once again, there's one of you and 1,000 of us. But constant reminders, emails, even though they probably build up in our inboxes, some of us actually do check our emails. So probably emailing. I check my email. I'm really good with my emails. But
I got 3 emails yesterday to register for orientation, which was great. Like, I needed all 3 of them.
Yeah. So it's really well. Like, email, text messaging, because we're more technological back now. So just emailing constantly, like, getting on us. And then eventually, I know that we will connect with you guys.
I will say, like Brett just said, the 3 emails, I actually need the spam, like, attempt. Like, I feel like I get, like, a lot of emails either from Seminole State or from UCF on a daily basis, but it's actually really necessary, and it helps remind me, oh, yeah, I forgot I need to do that. So, honestly, the several email attempt thing works great for me.
I think that when I was speaking about having communication problems, it went back to something that I think maybe Demi might have said, where sometimes you're attempting to find the right person to talk to about something, and you get lost in the massive directory, because not only do we have 30,000 plus students, but we have how many thousands of faculty members? So when you're attempting to find that one person who can give you that one form or get that one form through where it needs to go, you kind of get lost in all of it. I know that we have an online directory, but it doesn't always have correct numbers, or it has numbers to, you see a number for a person, but it's to their office, but not to that specific person. You'll get their secretary or somebody at a front desk. So I think that there might need to be some better form of directory for us finding the people that we need when we need them.
And I wanted to say, at least for me, it works a lot, communication through Canvas, like when I see the modules on Canvas, because I have to log into Canvas every time. I might not log into my email, but I log into Canvas because I have to go to my classes. So when I get to see things there or videos there, it helps me a lot. And also having the success coaches in the regional campuses, that helps a lot because in my case that I already transfer, when I have a question about financial aid, I can just go to them and they have always been able to help me. So it hasn't been just the beginning process. They have also been there for me like through this whole process. But maybe having more communication with them, even though I know, like, for example, in my case for social work, my advisors are only in the main campus. So I know if I have questions about social work specifically, I have to go there or talk to them. But in case of events or financial aid or other things, I've been able to communicate with them. But like I said, maybe like Canvas or things where students are always more involved because sometimes we don't look at our emails.
I don't know if this is already a thing or not, but something that I always wanted was like, if you just have a really short, quick question, it's really stressful to be on the phone for 3 hours and emailing and not knowing who to talk to. And there's becomes a point when you're on the phone being transferred so much that the people transferring you have no idea where you're even supposed to go either. So I've always wanted like a chat box in Canvas or something like that where you could just like, hey, when is this due? Where do I send this? Who do I email for this? And just getting a phone number or an email, like that's all we really need because we're trying to reach back out to you after your guys' spam emails. And it feels like I always hit a dead end, so.
Thanks. I was curious about the question of engagement because this is important to us, but that's because this is our profession. And our the data that we study shows that students who are engaged do better graduate, and so that's why we push it so much. But it occurs to me, many of you have reflected. I mean, you have really busy, full lives, and the university and the college experience is just like one little piece of that. And so, like, that's okay, And I'm just wondering, like, is it really important to you, or are you satisfied with the level of involvement that you have now? Like, some of you have spoken to really wanting a very rich, comprehensive university experience, but others are like, I have 2 kids and, a cat to take care of or whatever. So I don't know. I'm just kind of gauging, like, sometimes I feel like our push on engagement is maybe doesn't really match what you care about. So I'm just wondering how you think about that.
What I could say towards that is especially, yeah, I'm very busy and all that kind of thing. But I actually enjoy the attempts at engagement because I wish I had more free time to participate in some of these things. And when I do find a little bit of free time in here and there, I do try and be as engaged as possible because it does matter to me. It makes you feel more connected. It makes you feel, I'm not at UCF yet, but in the sense it would make you feel more of a knight. One of the things that I remember from back in high school, I did Model UN, and UCF back then, I'm not sure if they still do, had Nightman every year. And so I was looking forward to, hopefully, if that was still around, being a part of that again once I started at UCF. So, the engagement is important, or at least it is to me. It's just trying to fit that in to everything else.
I wanted to say yes, it's important because in my case, I had my kids before going to college. So I feel that I missed some of that, like out of high school, go to college, have crazy time or whatever it is. So I missed some of that. And when I get there, sometimes I have even seen bouncy houses and I'm like with my heels and trying to walk to the classroom and I'm like, I want to be in the bouncy house. I don't care that I'm 32 years old. Like I want to participate of that because I didn't have the experience before. So yeah, like when it's there and we're able to, I would love to participate. And like I work in the advising office in the front desk, and every time that I get students, and I also have work studies, so when I get them or when I have students that come in and ask, I try to push, like, please go to the events, please go to the Direct Connect office, because it's a feeling that I didn't have, and I know it makes a huge difference in the students.
Just like
real quick, last comment.
Go ahead. Just like my last 2 colleagues, I too do desire to spend more time engaging with the university activities, but time But I do thank you for pushing engagement. And I think my biggest thing is location. But I do, and it's a great desire for me to connect with other peers in the University of Central Florida. Currently, I'm an online student. I was able to engage with physical students from UCF for maybe 2 semesters, and that was in 2016. And it's 18, and I haven't been able to actually fellowship with other UCF students because of time and location of engagements. But I do appreciate you for pushing it, because it helps to feel like I am a UCF student when I do engage with others who are also a part of the university.
So I would just like to thank our student panel. They've done a phenomenal job. They're also going to be joining our steering committee for lunch. So if any of our leadership with steering committee have any follow-up questions, our student panel will be around to share lunch with us. They'll also be around here for a little bit longer. So if you want their autographs, come up and get those now. So again, thank you everybody for attending. Y'all did a phenomenal job. Thank you.